So what was 2024's biggest surprise when it comes to the movie industry? $200 million budget sequel bombing at the box office? The fact that industry pundits and audiences still believe that Ridley Scott can produce a great movie? Or perhaps this unexpected viral moment?
So go back to the club.
Well, if you ask me, the biggest surprise was how a biopic about a heavily disliked subject matter, whose ubiquitous presence via media saturation managed to actually bring audiences from all over the political spectrum to movie theaters and actually do decent business at the box office. I'm Pedro from Vinyl N Celluloid, and this is my review of The Apprentice.
There's a place where a kid without a cent he can grow up to be president.
Well, if you read my reviews or watched any of my other videos, then you probably already know how I feel about biopics. The large majority aren't, well, very good, and present nothing other than decent prosthetics and mirroring-based acting.
Booby, please.
There's usually a strong bias that you wouldn't normally find in, say, a documentary or a book. But there are two exceptions though. A, if the subject matter is interesting enough, and I know this can be quite a subjective criterion, and B, if the execution, be that the narrative structure or the angle chosen to tell the story, is compelling or at least innovative enough. Well, Ali Abbasi's The Apprentice barely meets the first criteria. It actually fits into I would say, even rarer category, let's call it C, none of the above, where a movie, biopic or not, is just good. And what makes this title good? More on that in a minute. The Apprentice follows Donald Trump's rise from his early real estate ventures to becoming an influential public figure. Starting in the 1970s New York, the audience is introduced to a young Donald Trump played by Sebastian Stan, an aspiring mover and shaker who operates through his father's company in the intense world of real estate. His unrelenting ambition results in a chance encounter with the infamous prosecutor and attorney Roy Cohn, played by Jeremy Strong. Cohn, known for his ruthless legal tactics and Machiavellian principles, mentors Trump, showing him how to navigate the murky waters of power with a win-at-all-costs mentality. Trump's rise is marked by bold moves into risky ventures like casino ownership and high-profile Manhattan developments, with Cohn continually advising him to pursue his goals without regard for convention or limits. When faced with setbacks, Trump adopts Cohn's unrelenting ethos, leveraging media and legal tactics to cement his public image. The attitude and spirit go beyond his professional ventures, trickling down into his personal life, namely his relationship with his love interest-turned-wife, Ivana Zelnichkova, played by Maria Bakalova. As Trump's ambitions grow, so does his confidence, leading him down a path where his power and influence extend beyond real estate into media and politics. Now, with the context of a synopsis, if you haven't watched the movie, or a quick refresher if you did, I think you can guess what I'm going to point out as the film's positives. For starters, we have a creative use of a controversial and well-known figure to tell a story about systems and power. That is, to me at least, what the movie was about. The Apprentice reframes the story of Trump's rise as a simple byproduct of both the American political system and the intrinsic human quest for power. Trump wants it, on his own terms granted, Cohn has it. The Danish-Iranian filmmaker has chosen to portray this dynamic and the overall Cohn-Trump relationship as one akin to the relationship between Dr. Frankenstein and the creation. Trump wanted to make his vision come to life, and for that he needed the power to operate solo. Roy Cohn had the power to make it happen, and all he wanted in return was to strengthen his position through his network and to be credited, or let's say at least recognized for his creation, much like what had happened with his other protege, Roger Stone. The Apprentice showcases Roy Cohn as the kind of puppet master, if you will, who operates in the shadows with the assistance of a very strong set of connections which included names like Ronald Reagan and Rupert Murdoch. Cohn tried to cultivate a similar relationship with the aspiring real estate mogul, but much like what happened in the Frankenstein story, the creator lost control of his creation. This is a perfect segue into the Donald Trump character. Trump's arc is a compelling one. When the movie starts, we find him as a meek yet driven entity that lives in his father's shadow. But by the time the movie ends, we end up with the force of nature that outcons Cohn. In the process, we find how a man was shaped by one of the most ruthless behind-the-scenes players in American politics. Now, I'm not going to say that it's all Cohn's fault, but certainly what Cohn comes to represent, in terms of a system, can certainly be seen as a fertile ground to cultivate personas like Trump. This dynamic between two real-life characters is beautifully brought to life by what are, in my opinion, two of the most talented actors working today. That chameleon known as Sebastian Stan, and the only thespian that could possibly justify the use of method acting these days, Jeremy Strong. The way these two carried the narrative and the movie is one of the rare reasons that justifies the existence of a biopic. The two actors try to humanize the real-life figures that they play by balancing negative traits with somewhat relatable flaws. It's a tough task, but I think Stan and Strong completely pull it off. The duo also does a marvelous job exposing two contrasting forms of power. On one side we have Cohn's old-school behind-the-scenes operator persona, rooted in expertise, in using legal technicalities to his advantage, extensive political connection, and the use of intimidation, manipulation, and fear to gain advantage. The type of influence that could be easily developed during the government-trusting post-World War II years. On the other, we find Donald Trump's 1980s made type of power. And you know what I'm talking about, the kind of power based on public persona, media presence, and charisma to command attention. One that's also dependent on wielding economic power. The two mix and match, and well, seeing Jeremy Strong and Sebastian Stan taking on two characters locked in a battle of egos is just terrific. But, like in virtually any other movie, there are also some negative aspects. As we saw in the flawed 2016 satire, and I don't know if anyone even remembers this Johnny Depp starring movie, The Art of the Deal, mocking Donald Trump looks easy, but it isn't. And if you need any more evidence, look, you have 8 years of painfully and funny SNL sketches to look at. Abbasi's movie does take itself seriously, which is good, refusing to engage in any kind of exaggeration, a commendable effort considering the already exaggerated nature of the subject matter. But still, I could have done without all of those wink-wink moments. I mean, there are smarter ways to get your points across without drenching a movie with hindsight-driven, cheap laughs. Also, and bearing in mind the movie's focus is the Cohn-Trump power dynamic, The Apprentice finds Maria Bakalova's Ivana Trump with nothing to do. A waste of a great actress in what could have been a fantastic performance. There are hints of her unique personality and what attracted her to Trump to begin with, and even how their relationship unfolded. But ultimately, Ivana as a character is reduced to the same characterization of any female stock player shown in Hollywood Wives. Another issue I have with The Apprentice is the forced vintage look, one used ad nauseum and justified by cinematographer Casper Tuxen as the only way to both capture the grain and texture of 1970s 16mm news camera reels and recreate the New York City setting of the 1980s. This look is pretty much a hit or miss, in my opinion, and I think the constant VHS-like recreation loses its charm quickly, and in my opinion, even cheapens the movie. Another thing I'd like to point out is that whilst Martin Dyrkov's score, a set of compositions assisted by David Holmes and Brian Irvine, is thrilling, there was a minor musical anachronism that really put me off, and that was the inclusion of the Pet Shop Boys track Always on My Mind, released in 1987, to depict a scene that took place 4 or 5 years before. Creative choice or goof, either way, it's not good. I trust this last complaint won't impact most of you watching this episode, so feel free to disregard it. Bringing it all home, I think making a movie like The Apprentice takes guts, and releasing a semi-biopic title about a man who is literally Hitler in an election year when the masses are already saturated with the candidate's media presence seems like risky business. Just ask Paul Thomas Anderson and Clint Eastwood, who both reportedly refused to help the project. But what Ali Abbasi did was simply fantastic. It has been reduced by the simple-minded Marvel heads who labeled the movie as a villainous origin story, but it's in fact a well-crafted study of power and how a system creates a man. A big part of the risk comes from the subject matter. We know that the slightest empathy towards or even sympathetic portrayal of the former president would no doubt be met with a one-way ticket to a cultural gulag, far more removed than the one Mel Gibson was sent to. Abbasi pulls it off by smoothing the shock with a Wall Street-inspired mentor-mentee relationship that is entertaining and well presented. And well, to voluntarily choose to endure 2 hours of Trump in a world where his face is virtually everywhere and come out praising what you've seen is truly a testament to the quality of Abbasi's work.